Welcome to this week's episode of Trista's Plate Story podcast. I'm Trista Polo from iwokeupawesome.com, and I am your host. Each week we learn the story behind that vanity plate. You know, the one you saw driving down the road? What did it say? What did it mean? Why did they choose it? Welcome to Trista's Plate Story podcast. I'm super excited today to have Samantha from Wisconsin. Her license plate is very fun. It is, ew, David. Welcome, Samantha.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to have you. Now, I have to share the story of how we got connected. I was on Facebook, and a police officer had posted your car because he was so enthralled with your license plate as a huge fan of the show it comes from. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I must be connected. And he actually connected us.
Yeah, that was a really interesting way to get connected. And it kind of blew up. The police officer shared it, and then one of our news channels picked it up here. So it was crazy.
That's awesome. Now, what part of Wisconsin are you from?
I'm from the southeastern part of Wisconsin in Muskego, which is kind of near Milwaukee area.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Now, not everybody probably knows that quote, although it is a very famous quote. So why don't you tell us what inspired you to choose that as your license plate? Tell us the story behind it.
So during COVID, I was very just like down in the dumps, and I needed a good pick-me-up show. And some of my old coworkers were talking about Schitt's Creek, and I tried to watch it once, and I watched the first episode, and I was like, I don't know if I can get into it. And then I watched it again, and I was like, all right, I'm in. So I binged the entire 6 seasons within not even 2 weeks. And
wow.
The moment I was done, I had already purchased a blanket with Schitt's Creek all over it, some mugs, some coloring books, David's looking sunglasses, just everything. And my husband was like, oh my gosh. And then even my 10-year-old daughter was like, you are obsessed, Mom. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to get a license plate. And then I went back and forth on which one I should do. And I was going to do Thrice. And then I was like, no, I just really like you, David. So that's how I ended up choosing it. But it became an obsession. And I still watch it over and over again.
You do. I have things that I do watch over and over again. I'm curious, you watched that first episode. I had that reaction when I watched the first couple. I'm like, what is the excitement about with this show? I don't really get it, but it sort of like got in my space. It got under my skin.
Mm-hmm.
And it became something my husband and I would watch right before we went to bed every night. We'd watch a couple of episodes before we went to bed. And we really enjoyed watching it together. What do you think it was for you that had you go from, I don't know that I'm really going to get into this show, to being such a huge fan?
So when I watched the first episode the second time, I really honed into David's character. And I think because I loved him, from the moment I heard him talk, and then to watch his reaction to everything during that first episode, then I was like, okay, I want more of this character, specifically him. And I love Eugene Levy. So, and Catherine O'Hara, I love them, especially together. So I was like, all right, I'm going to give this a chance. And then after the first couple episodes, I was just hooked in and I didn't stop. And my husband even was like, are you going to wait for me to watch the episodes? And I was like, sorry, I played it while I was working and I listened to it on my way home. And so, yeah, I didn't wait for him.
No, sometimes you just can't,
Right?
Sometimes you just can't wait.
Exactly. I'd watch it on my phone before I would go to bed. And all of a sudden I'd be like, so I'm on the next season. He's like, are we not doing this together? And I was like, no.
So did he end up watching the whole season or the whole series by himself?
No. So he watched with me, and then I would catch him up and he'd be like, well, wait, what's going on? And then he got really into it. And there were moments where he shed some tears. I was sobbing. There will always be moments of that show that will get me every time, and I will rewatch my favorite episodes over and over. I got a tattoo based on one of my favorite episodes, so it's just
Really?
oh
Tell
yeah.
me about your tattoo.
So my tattoo is an olive branch, and then underneath the olive branch it says "Simply the Best" from season 4, the olive branch episode where David sings to Patrick, and it
Awesome.
just every time it gets me.
Yeah.
And I will cry every time I watch that episode.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I really did love when David and Patrick got together. I loved watching that unfold and the whole relationship of theirs for sure.
Absolutely. That might be my favorite. And him and Stevie. So even though, at first it was kind of like, well, wait, is he gay? Is he bi? And then, it was, well, I'm into the wine, not the label. And, it just kind of went from there. And Patrick and David's love story, I think, is one of my favorite love stories I've ever seen in a show.
Yeah. They really did a great job with that. And that's the thing I think I like about the show so much is it has so much heart, even though the family, what's their last name?
The Roses.
Thank you.
Yep.
Even though the Rose family is like selfish and rich and, elitist and entitled, just all these terrible things that you just don't like about people when they're like that. They have so much heart that you're rooting for them and you're watching them learn lessons and grow into 3-dimensional people with, just love at the center of it all. And I think that's probably what sold me on the show is when I saw that it was much more than just a terrible family having terrible things happen to them, which is sort of how it felt when I first started watching it.
Absolutely. And you look at it, and maybe that's what turned me off the first episode. When I first watched it, I was like, okay, I don't, that's not me. Like, I'm not, I'm not, the elite, so it was like, how do I compare to myself? Like,
how do I relate to these people?
Right. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. I'm not relatable. There's no relating to them. So I was kind of turned off by that. But then, like you said, throughout the show, one of my other favorite episodes was when Myra and Johnny went to dinner with Roland, and they had their, it was their anniversary or whatever, and their old friends were there, and they stood up for the shits, and it was like, yes, there was like a turning point. And I cried because you were so connected to the family already, and then it was just that moment of, okay, there's the good people coming out. And because so much, even right now in society, like, everyone is judgmental, and, well, not everyone, but there's so much judgment going on. And so to see that, and to see that these people that never would have been friends with Jocelyn and Roland are standing up for them. Like, I mean, that it just hit home really, really hard for me. So
yeah, I agree. I remember that episode as well. And, it's a pretty common storyline to show how far someone has come as a character in a show, but they did really, really good job with it. Now, your actual license plate isn't Schitt's Creek, it's Ew, David. Yeah. And so can you enlighten those of us who don't know the show as well, the background of that exact phrase?
Sure. So Alexis Rose started the Ew, David. And, it's funny because I think there was a count of how many times she actually said it. And it wasn't that many, but it was other phrases that she would say, like, oh, David, or just random things. So, but the Ew, David just stuck with me because he's just my favorite. And his character resonates with me so much. So even though it's an Alexis quote, there's so much about him within that it just worked for me.
Yes. I think it's funny that you say that she didn't actually say that specific phrase very often, and yet it is synonymous with the show.
Oh yeah.
It totally is. If you know the show, you can picture her saying it, her facial expression, you can hear the intonation, not just the words, but how she says them. And anybody who says the phrase that has seen the show knows that you don't just say, "Ooh, David," you say, "Ew, David." Like, you have
Right.
to say it with that
Uh-huh.
special juice to it.
Right, exactly. And I think there's like a YouTube video where it shows all the different ways that she said it. So there was the "Ew, David," and then there was the "Stop, David," and David. So it didn't even matter, but it was just the "ew" stuck. So
Yeah.
I think that's why that's what I picked.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so we've talked a lot about Schitt's Creek. Let's talk a little bit about you. Tell me a little more about you.
So I'm a mom of 2. I have a 10-year-old and I have a 8 19-month-old. It's like a year and a half. I don't do the months. It's a year and a half. So, and then my 10-year-old is my daughter, and I do have a husband who actually adopted my daughter, so that we have a full family now, and it's great. Um, we moved into our house 4 years ago, actually in June now. So we've been in this community for a while, and I have a lot of passion for helping people. I work in the human service field, and it that is my passion. I want to help people better themselves. I want to make sure that I'm putting all of me into other people. Sometimes I end up forgetting about myself, but it just
That's
that's my
common.
exactly. That's just
Yeah.
my passion. And I have a lot of passion for equal rights and social justice and a lot of the different movements that are going on in our society right now. So I'm very very versed in that, and that's something that I really care about. Um I just found out actually that Pride Fest is coming back in October in
That's
Milwaukee.
exciting.
It is, and it's huge because we haven't had it in 2 years now because of
Yeah.
COVID. So the fact that they're bringing it back just for a weekend in October is really cool. But that's another one of my passions is the LGBTQ community. So
Yes, I'm in New York and they did have an outside. I'm in Hudson Valley, so I'm like an hour and a half, 2 hours north of New York City. But in New York City, they had a live Pride parade for the first time since the pandemic
I
and
saw
during
it.
Pride Month. Yeah, and it was huge and amazing. And I wasn't there personally, but I loved seeing all my friends there and sharing all the pictures that they took while they were in that space. So yeah, that's exciting. Are you going to be there? Do you volunteer for that event or do you attend?
I plan to go, and one of my friends does volunteer work for them, so she's gonna get me in on the volunteer list this year. So I'm gonna
Awesome.
be helping out. So,
Ah,
and I'll wear
very
my
cool.
my free mom hugs.
Oh, okay. Mom hugs are the best hugs.
They are. They are.
Yes, especially someone like you who loves to care and give to other people. I bet that's like a mom hug plus.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I there are days where like someone will tell a story or I'll be listening to I've gone to some speakers before and stuff, and I'll listen to all these stories that get brought up, and after I'll go up to them and be like, "Can I give you a hug?" And I'll just squeeze them because it's like,
Yeah.
"You've been through so much. Let me just give you a hug." Like
Aw.
it's just there's so many great stories that we don't always hear about.
And we can do that now.
Right. I missed that. That
I
was
bet.
something I
I
missed.
bet. I will admit to being, it turns out, a closet hermit. So that sounds sort of weird, but I'm a very outgoing, gregarious person. I'm a people person. I'm always out at the events. But during the pandemic, I actually learned about myself that I'm a closet hermit. Like deep, deep inside, I really would just rather be home.
Oh, well, see, yeah, and I'm opposite. I
Yeah.
mean, I
Yeah.
think I learned, like, as much as I like being home, and I like the peace and quiet and, like, just kind of having the lazy days, I love being around people, like, just the energy and
Yeah. I think we all learned really like who we really are at the core over the
absolutely.
pandemic, right? Because you got to see like how comfortable were you being in the same environment every day, away from people you're used to seeing, And I think we really got to see who we truly are at the core
Absolutely.
during that time.
When it was hard for me because so I stayed at my parents' house overnight pretty much every night, because it was easier with my little one. My mom would babysit him. So I would wake up, I would walk downstairs to their basement, I'd start working. It would have been over a year that we had been doing that. So I was moving back and forth between my house and my parents' house every week. And it was
Wow.
out of a suitcase. And so in preparation for Monday this week, I'm back in the office full time. So
Wow.
an adjustment.
How are you feeling about that?
I don't know yet. I'm excited to see people. Like going from 0 to 100 is going to be an adjustment, I think.
I agree with you. Yeah, for sure. So I am a self-worth advocate. I talk a lot about that with my coaching clients, and I would love to hear in your life, how has self-worth played a role? What have you done to manage your self-worth?
Absolutely. So when I was younger, I really, really, really struggled with depression and anxiety. And I mean, I had issues where, I would cut my wrists and I would be just all in my head. And then there were days where I'd be like, I don't want to be here anymore. And then, I eventually got more out of that when I hit like sophomore year of high school. And I think a lot of it was I just didn't know who I was. And I didn't know where I belonged. And I didn't know who, who I was supposed to become. Which I mean, when we're younger, we don't know that. But I think I really had a really hard time with it. It runs in my family where my grandma was bipolar and she actually died by suicide. But there's just I was very confused. And, that went into my adult years at first. I struggled with my sexuality. I'm bisexual. I deal, or so I have been with women and I've been with men. And, that was hard to grasp. We have come a long way in the LGBTQ community, but it took me so long to even say it out loud because it was so looked down upon. And I couldn't understand why. And it was just, but so then that was part of my self-worth too. It was like, okay, this isn't right. I'm not right. I'm not, I'm not worthy. I'm messed up. I'm different and it's not the right way to be. So I tried to change myself and that didn't work either. So eventually I just was like, you know what? This is who I am. This is me. And if you don't like it, you can just get lost.
What age? That's amazing, especially when even in the LGBTQ community, bisexuality was like the black sheep. Like if you aren't actually gay, then there's something wrong with you, like it's fake or something. There was this whole thing, like it wasn't okay to be bisexual for a really long time.
Correct.
Even in that community.
Correct. It was either, nope, you're either gay or you're straight. There was no in between. And I'm like, okay, but what about me? I am both. And I don't know. I don't know how to handle that. And, there were some of my friends that were, so have you always been this way? There were a lot of people that judged me for it. And it was just kind of like, whatever. My mother-in-law saw my post one day on Facebook and she called my husband. She goes, do you know that Sam is bi? And he was like, yeah, mom. But so it's just, I've become a lot more vocal about it now because of the way that things are headed. And I think that's me also like being that ally for others that are in the same boat. Because I mean, my cousin just came out as bi, my other one did, like they're all starting to come out now. And so I'm just saying, hey, it's okay. It's okay to be different. It just, it's hard.
We still have a ways to go. I actually have a friend that posted an article. She's a writer and she founded an organization called the TMI Project. Her name is Eva Tenuto. And she just did an article about she's married to a woman. And so people assume that she's a lesbian, and she's not. She's like, I am not a lesbian. That's the title of the article. And of course, you're like, wait, but you're married to a woman. How is that possible? Because your mind makes assumptions. Like, we like to label and categorize and put people in boxes so our brain can understand it. And, it took a long time, I think, for society to be okay with being gay. Now we have to figure out somebody who's neither or both, or even asexual. Like, there are so many different ways people identify that they're finally willing to be truthful to themselves and the world about. I think we need to find a better pronoun than they, because that's just confusing to people, because it's like a plural versus a singular. But I'm so glad we have ways for people to say, this is me, this is how I want to addressed, this is who I am. And like, there's space for that now.
There is. I was just at a resort, and there was the bathroom didn't have men or women on it. It just said gender neutral. And I was like, oh, thank you. Like, there's finally, and there's so many arguments about that too. Like, well, if this person identifies as a woman, should they be able to be in a woman's bathroom? I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, we're all in a stall. Does it really matter?
It doesn't matter.
How?
Right. In fact, when I go to a place that has a men's room and a women's room, I'm like, do you know what year it is?
Right, exactly.
I feel like it's sort of antiquated now to have two different gender rooms, and it's only men and women.
Yep. We have to start teaching our kids that it's okay too.
We do. It starts when you're young, for sure. And, I definitely learned tolerance in my own home before I ever even got to school,
right,
for race and sexual orientation and, religion differences. I remember my grandparents, I think my grandfather was Catholic and my grandmother was Protestant. I feel like that's what it was. And he was forbidden from marrying her because she wasn't Catholic, because she was Protestant. And so there's a lot of ways that you can be discriminatory against people. Right. And because of that, like, they got married anyway and had 3 children, and all of us grandkids and great grandkids have come along since. But I think that tolerance started from their love, like, we love each other no matter what. And that has permeated into my whole family, which I'm so grateful for, because I do think that starts when they're little kids in the home.
Absolutely. So, I know in my job, like, we have people that are married that are gay, and they don't say anything about it because they're worried. And it's like, okay, cool. I hope you guys are happy. That's all that really matters.
That's right. It's hard enough to be happy when you're married, to have to then feel like you have to hide it or right, because you feel like you're going to be judged. Like, to love each other in the face of external challenges. Like, there's enough internal challenges when you're married.
Correct.
And add kids to the mix and money to the mix and decisions about big things like houses and things. And there's just enough to have to deal with without having to worry about what the outside world will think of you. So I really honor people who choose love. They just choose love no matter what. And they know that love will get them through whatever they face, internal or external challenges. Yeah.
And that, I think, is what resonates with me so much about David's character, because that is how he is. There was him and Stevie, then there was him and Patrick, and then his and Stevie's relationship turned into this amazing best friendship. And at first you're rooting for them to end up together, but then you realize, like, it's okay. They're both their own person. They both are into the wine, not the label. So that resonates with me so much, because you could just see, like, hey, we have someone who is gay on a TV show that, like, our children are even watching. My daughter was watching it with me, but they're not even just gay. They are the black sheep. They are bi. And look at, he was with a woman, now he's with a man. Like, it just was like that validation. So I think that it just, that in general, the show being out there and Dan Levy just like letting all of his emotion into that character, that says a lot, and our children are seeing it. And I mean, there were parents writing into him just telling him like, you changed my kid's life, like you made him feel okay that he could be different. And it's just, I think that's what this show did for people.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great place for us to kind of round into full circle in the conversation.
Oh yeah, sorry, I totally just went back.
No, it's good. It's perfect. It's called a callback in comedy. Very, very good stuff. Good job.
All right. I should go be a stand-up comedian now.
I was going to say, it's time for you to go on the road. Just add that to the pile of things that you manage on a weekly basis. No problem. No problem. So I know you love books. I know you love podcasts. Any particular books or podcasts that you've been enjoying that you'd like to recommend?
Podcasts? I am obsessed with Crime Junkies and Counterclock. Both of them are all about crime. I could sit and listen. I mean, we just went on a road trip up north, and it's like a 5.5 hour drive. And I made my mom listen to them while we were driving up. And, she started getting into it. And even my daughter, we were listening to a series, and she was like, well, I want to know what happens. Like, I don't think he actually did it. And so it's cool that she's kind of getting into it, which is nice.
Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing yourself. Like, I really feel like you shared your heart and yourself with us today. So thank you for that. I do like to turn the tables and ask if you have a question you'd like to ask me before we wrap up. Anything?
Where is your favorite vacation spot, and what's your favorite hobby when you go to those vacation spots? Or activity, not hobby. You know what I meant.
Activity, yeah. So I'm not really a lay on the beach and read a book kind of girl. So I think my two favorite things to do when I travel are to either go to like an amusement park. Like my honeymoon was in Disney. My 10th anniversary, we went back to Disney. My 25th anniversary, the very first day it opened, we went to the new Legoland Park, which is actually only like 30 minutes from here.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So we were there the very first day they opened. There were like 40 people in the whole park. The whole park wasn't even opened yet. It was sort of like a pre-opening. But I also really super love to gamble. I love to play craps. That's my favorite. Love a little blackjack, a little poker slots. My husband's pretty into roulette. He thinks he has a roulette system. I'm pretty sure that that's not possible, but he thinks he does.
I love
it. So we'll go to Atlantic City with family, or we'll go to Vegas for a little vacation. So I would have to say those are my favorite kinds of things to do.
But that's still like Vegas and Atlanta, that's still busy, so
yeah, exactly. I almost need a vacation when I'm done going away.
Right, exactly. Right, exactly.
Well, I want to thank you so much. Do you have any final words or thoughts that you want to share before we end?
That everyone should watch Schitt's Creek.
Okay, great. For anybody out there who didn't get past the first or second episode because you're like, I cannot relate to these people, get past it. There's a reason it's been so popular. If you are the one holdout left that has not watched this show, go do it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
For having me.
Yes, this was so fun.
Yes.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Trista's Plate Story Podcast. Please subscribe to Trista's Plate Story Podcast to get the story behind all those vanity plates driving with you on the road. And if you would like to nominate the owner of a license plate, including you, or visit any of our partners and sponsors, come and see us at platestory.com. That's PL8STORY.com, and give us the details. If you enjoyed this episode, please drop a review and give us a share. I'm Trista Polo, wishing you well on the road to your next adventure.